Billionaire comes home early and sees his fiancée pushing his daughter. He was shocked. Camille stood at the edge of the pool, her eyes filled with hatred as she stared at Anna, small and vulnerable with her arm in a pink cast. The girl tried to back away, but Camille advanced, spitting venom with every word. "Look at me when I talk to you, you useless little black girl!" Camille shouted, her voice sharp. "Do you think you deserve all this house, this life of luxury?" "You'll never be anything more than a nuisance," Anna cried, her body trembling. Camille laughed, cold, cruel. "Your father won't be here forever. And when he's gone, you'll learn that people like you are nothing but trash. You don't belong here." With a violent shove, Camille threw the girl backward. Anna's small body lost her balance, slipped, and fell straight into the pool. A dry splash echoed in the silent room. "No!" Daniel's scream exploded from the entrance. He didn't see the absurd things his manipulative fiancée had just done to his daughter. He just saw the girl in the pool drowning. Before continuing, I want to hear from you who are watching. Where are you following this story from? Comment your city below and subscribe to the channel because what happens next will leave you breathless. Camille, what did you do to my daughter? It wasn't the voice of a frightened man. It was the roar of a father on edge, about to explode. Camille spun around suddenly, leaving trails of wet footprints on the pool floor. For a moment, her face froze, unresponsive. In the water, Anna, Daniel's 6-year-old daughter, struggled to keep her head above the surface. Her arm, covered in a pink cast, weighed her down. Beside her floated the teddy bear she'd never let go of, now soaked. She likes water. Camille tried to justify herself, raising her hands as if innocent. "I always said it calms her down, Daniel." "You know that." He didn't answer. He ran to the edge and dove in, clothes and all. Within seconds, he had Anna in his arms, clutching her to his chest. She was trembling, clutching her father's wet shirt. "Oh my God," he murmured. "Anna, breathe, my love. Can you?" But the girl didn't speak. She hadn't spoken since her mother, Rachel, died 2 years earlier. Since that day, silence had become her only form of resistance. She only whispered small sounds when she hugged her teddy bear, Charlie, her lifelong companion. Now, in her father's arms, her eyes wide with fear said it all. She couldn't scream, couldn't call for help, and Camille knew it. Daniel stood up slowly, still holding his daughter, and turned to face his fiancée. Her face showed not concern, but irritation. "You're exaggerating," Camille replied. "She slipped." "Why are you yelling at me like I pushed her?" "I saw it," Daniel said, his voice cold. "You pushed my daughter. With her broken arm, she couldn't scream, couldn't call for help, and yet you threw her into the pool." Anna huddled closer against him, her little hands clutching the collar of her father's shirt. Daniel stepped forward, dripping water onto the floor, and added, "If you don't want to be called a monster, then stop acting like one." On impulse, he grabbed Camille's arm and pushed her into the pool. The sound of the impact echoed like thunder. She emerged soon after, screaming, her makeup smeared and her hair plastered to her face. "You're out of your mind!" she screamed. "No," Daniel replied, his gaze firm. "I just woke up. I'm a father, and I won't let you destroy my daughter." Anna buried her face in his neck, tears wetting his skin. Daniel held her even tighter, feeling the weight of guilt and fury build within him. The signs had been there all along. The bruises Camille called playground accidents, the nightmares, the way the girl flinched when she heard footsteps behind her. Now there was no more doubt, and the truth would be exposed. Daniel walked out of the yard carrying Anna in his arms, her body still trembling, the heavy plaster dripping with water. His heart was pounding, but his mind was now clear, sharp as a blade. He placed his daughter in a soft armchair in the living room, wrapped her arm in towels, and knelt beside her. No one will hurt you again, my love. I promise, he whispered. Anna stared at him, her eyes brimming with tears. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel saw a glimmer of confidence. He retrieved the laptop hidden inside the office. It wasn't the house's main system. That one had been mysteriously corrupted several times before. Always at times when strange things happened to Anna, Daniel knew it wasn't a coincidence. That's why, months ago, he'd installed 2 extra secret cameras without telling anyone. His hands trembled as he typed the password. Images flashed on the monitor. First, 2 days ago, Camille pulling hard on Anna's arm, the girl stumbling. Then, the scene from a week earlier, a plate breaking, Camille screaming and banging the table, the child cowering. In another clip, Camille kicked Charlie the bear, yelling that she was tired of that dirty rag. Daniel clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. It wasn't stress. It wasn't carelessness. It was calculated cruelty. He returned to the living room. Anna was still curled up in the armchair, hugging Charlie as if the teddy bear were her last shield. He knelt before her, his voice breaking. I should have seen this before. I should have protected you. Forgive me, daughter. Anna didn't say anything, but she reached out her little fingers and lightly touched his hand. The weight of guilt crushed him, but it also ignited a fierce determination. Daniel picked up the phone and called his sister, Lucy. I need you here. Now. Bring Raphael too. The lawyer? She asked, surprised. Yes, and quickly. Camille crossed the line. Footsteps echoed from upstairs. Camille came down the stairs, already changed, as if nothing had happened. Her hair was done. Her makeup was fresh, and a cold smile was on her lips. What was that drama out there? He said, crossing his arms. You know she's always making things up. She can't stand anything. Daniel stared at the woman without blinking. We have everything on video. For a moment, Camille's mask slipped, but then she forced a nervous laugh. Video? Are you spying on your own fiancé? That's sick. It's sick to push a child with a broken arm into a pool. It's sick to hurt someone who can't even call for help. Camille pressed her lips together. You will regret accusing me. Daniel just replied, No, you're the one who'll regret it. The silence that fell after those words was almost suffocating. Camille tried to maintain her composure, but Daniel could already see the nervousness in her eyes. Anna shrank even further into the chair, hugging Charlie tightly. Daniel approached his daughter and stood between her and Camille, like a human shield. From now on, you will not come near my daughter, he said firmly, his voice low but filled with contained fury. Camille laughed mockingly. Oh, please, you're exaggerating. I was just trying to teach boundaries. Children need discipline. Discipline is not violence, Daniel replied. What you did is abuse. She took a step forward, finger pointing. Do you think anyone will believe that? A devoted bride versus a mute girl who never opens her mouth? It was at that moment that the doorbell rang. Daniel opened the door and let Lucy in, followed by Raphael, his sister, always direct, didn't wait for an explanation. Where is Anna? As soon as she saw her niece, she ran to her, kneeling down to hug her carefully. Anna clung to Lucy, finally allowing a few tears to escape. Raphael closed the folder he was carrying and looked at Daniel. What happened? Daniel pointed to the open laptop, where the videos were already paused. Raphael watched a few clips in silence. His jaw tightened. That is enough to call for immediate protective measures. Camille crossed her arms and snorted. This is ridiculous. These images are illegal. They have no value. Raphael raised his eyebrows. Recorded inside their own home by a father who has legitimate custody of his daughter, the law is on his side. Lucy stood up, staring at Camille as if she were a predator. You put your hands on my niece. You'll pay dearly for this. Camille tried to hide her insecurity. You're making a scene. Daniel, think about it. Are you going to destroy your own reputation because of a misunderstanding? Daniel didn't hesitate. I would rather lose everything than lose my daughter. Camille opened her mouth to retort, but Daniel had already turned to Raphael. I want the paperwork ready by tomorrow morning. Court order, restraining order, everything. Raphael nodded. I'll take care of it. But be prepared. She'll react. And when she does, it won't just be in court. Daniel took a deep breath. He felt not only anger in his chest, but also a newfound clarity. For the first time in 2 years, since Rachel had left, he knew exactly what he needed to do, protect Anna at any cost. And Camille had just opened the door to a war she never imagined facing. Camille stood in the living room, her face still stained with anger, while Daniel arranged a blanket over Anna. Lucy held her niece in her arms, rocking gently, trying to convey reassurance. You're not going to turn this into a circus, Camille snapped, trying to regain control of the situation. You're not going to destroy our lives in a fit of hysteria. Daniel stared at her, his voice thick with steel. Our life? You just lost the right to use that word. Raphael opened the folder and began organizing documents on the table. Daniel, I need you to tell me everything, from when you noticed the signs, every detail. This will be crucial. Daniel took a deep breath, running his hand through his wet hair. Months, unexplained bruises, sleepless nights, Anna refusing food when Camille was the one cooking, and the videos confirm what I feared. Lucy closed her eyes tightly, containing her fury. And you let this woman sleep under the same roof. I wanted to believe they were coincidences, Daniel murmured. But it's over. Camille lifted her chin, laughing in disdain. Coincidences? Of course, you're all blind. You don't understand anything about raising a child who doesn't speak, who doesn't react. I'm the only one who actually tried to bring order. Daniel approached, his gaze icy. Order? You call abuse of order? She took a step back, but the sarcastic tone quickly returned. What do you think will happen? Will you kick me out? The press will love it. The billionaire who watches his fiancée and makes up stories of abuse. You'll be ridiculed. Raphael intervened, calm but firm. The law will have the last laugh, and it's on the side of the child. Out of nowhere, Daniel's phone vibrated. It was a notification from the security system. He quickly opened it and realized that files were corrupted again. Anger rose in his throat. See, he said, holding up his phone. Whenever something happens, the videos disappear. You messed with that, Camille. She didn't answer. She just turned her face away. Silence was already a confession. Lucy stood up, shaking her brother's hand. I'll stay with Anna tonight. You need to settle this once and for all. Daniel nodded. He looked at his daughter, who was watching him with frightened but trusting eyes. He knelt down, holding the wet teddy bear. Daddy will fix everything. I promise. Anna didn't say anything, but she rested her forehead against his. A small, silent gesture, but one that carried enormous weight. Faith. Daniel stood up, determined. Camille was no longer part of that house. What lay ahead wasn't just a family dispute, it was a battle for justice. Raphael adjusted his glasses and opened the folder on the coffee table. Papers, stamps, sheets of legal notes. Everything was organized with precision. Daniel, we need to act fast. This woman will try to turn things around. The sooner we file a protection order, the better. Daniel ran his hand over his face, exhausted. What exactly do we need? First, Raphael began, enumerating calmly. Protective measure, Camille can't go near Anna or this house. Then, we file a police report with the images. This gives us legal grounds. We then file a preventive action to prevent her from claiming any rights. Lucy, who was still holding Anna, intervened. "What if she goes to the press? You know Camille, she loves the stage." Raphael sighed. "That's where another front comes in. Daniel, your image is public. We need to control the narrative. We can't let it paint you as an aggressor." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of the words. "Then use everything. Videos, testimonies, medical reports if necessary. I don't care about my reputation. I just want to protect my daughter." At that moment, Anna lifted her head from her aunt's lap and stared at her father. Her eyes held a mixture of fear and trust. She clutched Charlie to her chest, as if the teddy bear were the bridge between silence and the world. Raphael observed the scene seriously. "The best defense is the truth, and we have proof. But we also need witnesses who can confirm your behavior and hers. Has anyone ever suspected Camille?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Yes. The former maid, Martha. She left after questioning a bruise on Anna's arm. Camille fired her that same day." "Great. Let's find her." Raphael wrote down the name. This could strengthen the case. Camille, who had been silent until then, exploded. "You're all against me. This is a conspiracy." Lucy immediately stood up, standing face to face with her. "It's not conspiracy, it's justice." Daniel didn't take his eyes off his bride. "You have lost the right to be called family." Raphael closed the folder with a sharp snap. "I'll submit the request to the judge tomorrow morning. Until then." "Daniel, keep Anna safe. Don't leave her alone for even a minute." Daniel nodded. He felt like the battle was just beginning, but now he was no longer alone. He had proof, he had allies, and above all, he had one non-negotiable motive: to protect Anna. And this time, no one would make him give up. Dawn brought a different weight to Daniel. He hadn't slept. He'd spent the night sitting beside Anna's bed, watching his daughter sleep with Charlie in her arms. The new day didn't mean routine, but the beginning of a war he couldn't lose. When the clock struck 7 in the morning, Raphael arrived in a dark suit, briefcase in hand. Lucy stood beside him, steady as a rock. "Are you ready?" asked the lawyer. Daniel took a deep breath, adjusting his tie. "I don't know if anyone is ready for this, but let's go." Anna woke slowly, her eyes still swollen from the night before. Daniel knelt beside her. "Daddy needs to go out for a bit. But Aunt Lucy will stay with you, okay?" The girl didn't answer, just buried her face in the teddy bear. Even so, she held her father's hand for a few seconds before letting go. It was as if to say, "Come back to me." At the courthouse, the hallways were crowded, but Daniel could only see the room where Raphael would file his petition. The lawyer entered first, exchanging brief words with a staff member. Then he returned with a grave expression. "The judge will review it today. But, Daniel, be prepared. Camille may try to defend herself before the measure is granted." Daniel crossed his arms. "Let her try." Shortly after, they were summoned. The judge's chambers were simple, filled with stacks of files. The judge, a weary-looking man, silently read the report and then watched the videos Raphael had brought. Each scene was a stab to Daniel's heart. Camille pulling, pushing, screaming. Anna, motionless, silent, always cowering. When the video ended, the judge took off his glasses. "Mr. Daniel, the material is compelling. I am granting an immediate protective order. Miss Camille must maintain a minimum distance of 500 meters from the minor." Daniel closed his eyes, breathing a sigh of relief. It was only the first step, but a huge one. On the way out, Raphael explained in a low voice, "Now, we need to think about the next step. Camille won't accept this. She'll fight back, probably claiming stalking or defamation." Daniel nodded. "Bring it on. I've faced worse." At that very moment, Raphael's phone vibrated. He answered, listened in silence, and then frowned. He was a colleague from the court. He looked at Daniel and Lucy. Camille filed a petition claiming you're unstable and tampering with evidence. Daniel stopped in the middle of the hallway. It's already started, then. Raphael put his hand on his shoulder. And that's why we need to be meticulous. The difference is that now we're not just reacting. We're prepared. Daniel lifted his chin. The battle was just beginning, but victory was beginning to emerge. While Daniel was returning home with Lucy and Raphael on the other side of town, Camille was already bustling about. Sitting in front of a lighted mirror, makeup artists and hairdressers were preparing her as if she were a star about to give an interview. "I want everyone to see a strong, wronged woman," she said, adjusting her light, soft dress. "No one will believe that grotesque version of Daniel." A hastily hired press team lined up phrases for her to repeat. Focus on the idea that you were a surrogate mother to Anna. Show emotion, make it clear that he's controlling. Camille practiced some fake tears in front of the mirror. Perfect, let's turn the tables. That afternoon, while Daniel was still trying to calm Anna at home, the television showed the images. Camille, her voice breaking and handkerchief in hand, said to reporters, "I took care of that girl as if she were my own. I was treated like trash, thrown into the pool, humiliated in front of everyone. Daniel is unstable. He manipulates the cameras, manipulates everything, and now he's trying to destroy me." Lucy turned off the TV with force. This snake doesn't waste time. Daniel sat beside his daughter, who was silently drawing in her notebook. The little girl was doodling pictures of a man and a child holding hands, while Charlie was drawn beside her. The lines were shaky, but full of meaning. Raphael entered the room holding some printed papers. The press bought her act, but we're already taking action. We've officially filed the hidden camera footage with the metadata intact. No one can claim manipulation. "What about public opinion?" asked Daniel. "She can scream all she wants," Raphael replied. "But the truth has proof, and proof speaks louder than rehearsed tears." Daniel looked at Anna, who looked up for a moment and then returned to her drawing. He bent down, kissed her forehead, and murmured, "It doesn't matter what she says out there. In here, I know who you are, and I will fight until the end." Anna clutched Charlie to her chest and almost imperceptibly let out a sound. A small sigh that sounded like an echo. Daniel froze, recognizing in that instant a sign. His daughter was beginning to return, and that gave him the strength to face the storm that Camille had just unleashed. The next day, Raphael arrived early at the mansion. He brought with him a printed list of contacts. "Daniel, we need to locate Martha, the former maid. If she confirms what she saw, her testimony could be decisive." Lucy had already gone ahead. "I called some acquaintances myself. I got her number. She's living with her sister in another city." Raphael smiled from the corner of his mouth. "Excellent. I'll schedule a meeting today." Meanwhile, Daniel watched Anna on the porch. She was sitting on the ground, scattered with leaves, drawing. On one of the pages, she had scribbled a simple scene, a woman pushing a small girl. The drawing was too clear to be just imagination. Daniel knelt beside her. "Do you remember that?" he asked softly. Anna didn't answer, but her teary eyes were enough. That same day, Martha arrived, greeted by Lucy with a tight hug. She was a middle-aged woman with a tired but firm look. Upon seeing Anna, her eyes filled with tears. "My dear, I tried to protect you." Daniel took her to the office, where Raphael was already ready to record every word. "Tell me exactly what happened, Martha." She took a deep breath. "I saw bruises on the girl's arm. I asked Camille, and she said Anna was clumsy, but when I persisted, Camille became furious. She said I was getting too involved and fired me that same day." Raphael wrote everything down. "Would you be willing to testify in court?" Martha nodded without hesitation. "I would. This child deserves justice." Daniel felt a relief he hadn't experienced in a long time. Now it wasn't just him against Camille. Voices were rising in Anna's defense. Outside, Anna watched the scene through the half-open door, clutching Charlie to her chest. For the first time, she seemed to feel she wasn't alone. And perhaps it was precisely this feeling that would help her find her voice again. Camille was sitting in an elegant cafe when she received the news. The press officer placed his cell phone on the table. Martha will testify. She's aligned with Daniel. Her face hardened. That little woman dared to interfere again. The advisor cleared his throat. If her testimony is accepted, combined with the videos, her situation becomes much more complicated. Camille took a deep breath and, with a venomous smile, replied, "Then let's discredit it. No one takes a fired employee seriously. Let's paint it as revenge." While plotting his defense, Daniel walked through the house with Raphael and Lucy. The evidence was mounting. Videos, reports, testimonies. But everyone knew Camille wasn't the type to back down easily. That night, the television aired a new interview. Camille, with artificial tears, declared, "This Martha was fired for incompetence. Now she's joining forces with Daniel to try to destroy me. This is a farce." Lucy turned off the TV, indignant. She won't stop. Raphael remained calm. "And that's why we need to speed up. I've already requested a technical analysis of the videos. That way, there's no way she can claim manipulation." Daniel looked at Anna, who was drawing on the couch. The girl had created a new image, herself, her father, and Lucy, all holding hands. Beside her, Charlie the bear. There was no trace of Camille. He knelt down and stroked his daughter's hair. "That's how it's going to be from now on, my love. Only people who truly love you." Anna stared at him for a moment, her eyes shining. Then, in an unexpected gesture, she touched her pencil to the paper and drew a small red heart above the figures. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. It was as if, in her silence, the girl was screaming louder than any words, and that silent scream would be the most powerful weapon against Camille. As night fell, the house was plunged into silence. Daniel waited for Anna to fall asleep. She was curled up, hugging Charlie, as always. Only then did he go to the office. He turned on the laptop connected to the hidden cameras. There were 2 files he still didn't have the courage to watch in full. He took a deep breath and clicked play. The dining room appeared on the screen. Camille was holding a glass of wine. Anna sat at the table, motionless, her gaze lost. Suddenly, Camille slammed the glass down hard on the table, causing the liquid to splash. "You think you're special just because you can't talk," he shouted, approaching the girl. "You're broken, you know, broken." Anna backed away, clutching the teddy bear to her chest. Camille, irritated, kicked the toy, which rolled across the floor. "I hate that dirty rag." Daniel paused the video, his breath quickening. He returned to the front. Another file. This time it was the pool area, 2 days before the push. Camille held Anna's cast-covered arm tightly, dragging her closer to the edge. "If you don't obey, you'll learn the hard way." Daniel closed his eyes, his fists clenched. It wasn't just cruelty, it was calculated, repeated, meticulous. He immediately called Raphael and Lucy. When they arrived, he showed them the videos without saying a word. Lucy brought her hands to her mouth, shocked. My God, she would do anything to the girl. Raphael shook his head, his face serious. "This isn't just domestic abuse anymore. It's a pattern of psychological torture. With this material, we can take action against the public prosecutor's office." Daniel stood up, pacing back and forth. "I should have seen it before. I should have stopped it." Lucy approached and grabbed her brother's arm. "There's no point in blaming yourself. What matters is that now you've seen, now you'll protect it." A soft noise echoed from the bedroom. Anna had been awakened by the murmurs. She walked to the door and stood there, hugging Charlie. Daniel ran to her, kneeling down. "It's okay, daughter. Daddy is here." She said nothing, but held the teddy bear out to him, as if sharing the burden. Daniel clutched the toy to his chest and then hugged her. In that silent gesture, he swore to himself he would never allow Camille to get near his daughter again. The next morning, Daniel arrived at Raphael's office with a flash drive in his hands. His face was pale, but determination shone in his eyes. Here are the missing videos." He placed the device on the table. "I want everything filed today." Raphael logged onto the computer and watched the scenes in silence. The sound of Camille's screams and the image of Anna cowering filled the room. When the video ended, the lawyer took a deep breath. "Daniel, this is tough. There's no way the judge can ignore it. But it also means Camille will fight like never before. She'll use the press, expensive lawyers, everything to turn the tide." "Let her use it," Daniel replied. "It's not about me now. It's about my daughter." Meanwhile, Lucy was caring for Anna at home. The girl was in the garden, drawing flowers in a notebook. Beside her, Charlie seemed to be watching her every stroke. Lucy watched silently, proud of her niece for resisting despite everything. Late in the afternoon, Raphael returned with news. "I filed a formal complaint and submitted the videos to the public prosecutor's office. I also requested official psychological counseling for Anna, which reinforces the seriousness of the case." Daniel nodded, but his mind was already elsewhere. "Raphael, what if she claims the videos were manipulated?" The lawyer gave a discreet smile. "I've already requested a technical report. The metadata confirms that it's authentic. Camille won't be able to escape this." A few hours later. However, television brought another surprise. Camille had called a press conference. Surrounded by cameras, she appeared dressed in white, with an angelic expression. "I was the victim of a controlling man. He spied on me, manipulated my images. I just wanted to take care of that child, but now I'm being painted as a villain." Daniel slammed the TV shut, his heart racing. She won't stop. Raphael remained calm. "Let her speak. Every lie she has contradicts the evidence we have. In court, theater doesn't trump evidence." From the hallway, a soft sound caught their attention. It was Anna, who had come downstairs with Charlie in her arms. She stopped in front of her father, lifted her notebook, and showed him a drawing. A tall man holding a small girl's hand, and behind them, a dark shadow being erased with an eraser. Daniel knelt down, overcome with emotion. "That's right, daughter. We're going to erase that shadow from your life." 2 days later, Raphael received the notification. The judge had accepted the evidence and scheduled the first hearing. This was the official start of the legal battle. Daniel felt his stomach churn as he read the subpoena. It wasn't fear of losing money or reputation. It was anxiety about exposing Anna, about reliving every detail of what she had suffered. "Raphael, my daughter can't go through this torment. She's already suffered enough." Daniel clutched the paper in his hands. "Calm down," the lawyer replied. "The initial hearing is just to hear the parties and analyze the technical evidence. Anna doesn't need to speak now." Daniel breathed a sigh of relief. Still, the tension didn't ease. On the morning of the hearing, Lucy took Anna to a trusted friend's house, away from the spotlight. Daniel and Raphael headed to the courthouse. In the living room, Camille was already waiting for them. She looked impeccable, a light dress, perfect makeup, and a serene expression, but her eyes betrayed arrogance. When the judge entered, the atmosphere became heavy. He opened the session with a firm voice. "We have serious allegations of mistreatment against the minor Anna Carter. We will analyze the evidence presented." Raphael stood up and played the videos. The images filled the screen. Camille pulling Anna by the arm, kicking Charlie, shouting insults. The judge watched in silence, his expression growing harder. When the video ended, Camille was quick to speak. "This is manipulation. Daniel is obsessed with control. He installed hidden cameras to monitor me, and now he's editing images to smear me." The judge raised his hand. "Ms. Camille, the videos have been examined. They are authentic." A murmur ran through the room. Camille lost control for a moment, but soon regained her fake smile. "Then I can only say they were taken out of context. I was just trying to enforce discipline." Raphael stood up. "Discipline isn't pushing a child with a broken arm into a pool. It's not humiliating them for not speaking up. That's psychological and physical abuse." The judge noted it in his folder. "The court will decide on the final measures soon. In the meantime, I maintain the removal order already issued." Daniel took a deep breath. It wasn't the final victory, but it was progress. As they left, reporters surrounded the hallway. Camille smiled for the cameras, pretending to be a victim. Daniel, on the other hand, walked by in silence. He didn't need words. The images spoke for themselves. Across town, Anna played quietly, stacking wooden blocks next to Charlie. But inside, she was beginning to feel something new: hope. The morning after the hearing, the news was filled with headlines. Images of Camille leaving the courthouse with a serene expression contrasted with the judge's harsh description of the videos. "Wronged bride" or "hidden villain," said the calls. Camille took advantage. In an interview with a magazine, she cried in front of the cameras. "I just wanted to be a mother to that little girl. Now I'm being pursued by a powerful man who refuses to lose control." Meanwhile, Daniel turned off the TV, feeling his blood boil. She won't stop. She'll continue to play the victim until the end. Raphael remained calm, adjusting the papers on the table. "And we will continue presenting evidence. The judge is already inclined to protect Anna. The problem is public opinion." Lucy, always direct, banged on the table. "Then we need to show the truth too." Raphael sighed. "Carefully. If Daniel speaks without strategy, she will use every word against him." Daniel looked out the window. In the garden, Anna was sitting on the grass, drawing sunflowers in her notebook. Charlie the bear was beside her. As always, he came over and knelt beside her. "What is it, daughter?" he asked softly. Anna pointed to the drawing, a smiling sun above the flowers. She didn't say anything, but the sparkle in her eyes conveyed hope. Daniel smiled, swallowing his emotion. "You're right. There is still light in the midst of darkness." That night, lying on the couch, he received a text message from an unknown number. He opened it suspiciously. It was short and to the point. "Be careful. She's done this before, and she won." Daniel's heart raced. He showed it to Raphael the next day. The lawyer frowned. "If this is true, we have more than an isolated case. We need to investigate her past." Lucy squeezed her brother's arm. Maybe Anna isn't the first child to suffer at Camille's hands. Daniel clenched his fists. Anger grew. "Then let's find out everything. She won't escape this time." Raphael spent the following days immersed in research. He used contacts at notary offices, courts, and even old newspapers. Each clue led to a different trail of Camille, always with different names, always in situations surrounded by hushed-up scandals. One afternoon, he walked into Daniel's office with a thick folder. "I found it." His voice was heavy. "Before you, Camille lived with a man in another region. He had a young son. The boy showed signs of trauma, but the father was never able to prove anything. In the end, he lost custody during the trial and disappeared from the media." Daniel stood still, feeling the weight of the discovery. So it wasn't the first time. "No," Raphael confirmed. "She's done this before. The pattern is the same. She approaches widowed or divorced men with vulnerable children, gains their trust, and then begins manipulating them." Lucy entered the room just at that moment. So we have to take criminal action, not just for protection. Raphael nodded. I'm already preparing it, but we need direct testimony. I'm trying to locate this man. Daniel looked out the window at his daughter in the garden. Anna was playing quietly, drawing pictures beside Charlie. He felt a lump in his throat. How many more children suffered at her hands? Lucy placed her hand on her brother's shoulder. Don't think about what happened. Think about what you can prevent now. That night, as he tucked Anna into bed, Daniel leaned down and whispered, I promise no one will ever hurt you again. Anna didn't answer, but she rested her forehead against his, the same way Rachel had done years ago. It was a gesture of trust. Daniel left the room with determination. If before he had simply wanted to protect his daughter, now he wanted something bigger, to completely unmask Camille, and this time I would go all the way. It was almost midnight when Daniel's cell phone vibrated on the table, an unknown number. He answered cautiously, Hello. On the other end, the voice was masculine, tired, but firm. You don't know me. My name is Robert. I lived with the same woman who is now destroying your life. Daniel straightened his posture. Camille? At the time, she used a different name. But it's the same. I had a son, Pedro, a sweet, talkative boy, until she came into our lives. His voice trailed off. Soon, he began to become silent. Marks appeared on his body. When I tried to report her, she had already painted me as the aggressor. I lost custody. I never saw my son again. The silence was heavy. Daniel closed his eyes, feeling the man's pain echo within him. She tried to do the same to me, but I found out in time. Then fight. Robert took a deep breath. I didn't have the strength, but you do. If you need my testimony, I'll give it. I can't let her do to another child what she did to my boy. Yes, I will, Daniel replied. Your testimony could save my daughter. After he hung up, Daniel stood motionless, staring into space. Camille's past now had a name, a face, and a victim. The next morning, he told Raphael and Lucy everything. The lawyer wrote down every detail. If we get that formal statement, it will be devastating for her defense. Lucy crossed her arms. This proves that Anna wasn't the first, and if we don't act, she might not be the last. Daniel looked at his daughter, who was drawing silently. The little girl was tracing a male figure next to a girl, both holding a son in their hands. It was her way of saying there was still light. He knelt beside her, his voice breaking. Thank you for showing me the way, daughter. I will protect you, and I will expose the truth. Raphael spent the entire week coordinating the next steps. He arranged for Robert to give a formal statement at a notary's office, detailing all of Camille's past. The document was now part of the case. This changes everything, the lawyer explained, sitting in Daniel's office. This is no longer an isolated case. Now we have a pattern of behavior, and that weighs heavily on the judge. Lucy, ever pragmatic, added, and it shows that she's a repeat offender. She's not someone in crisis, she's someone who plans. Daniel listened in silence, but inside, a mixture of anger and relief consumed him. Anger at what Camille had done to other families, relief that he was no longer alone. On the morning of the new hearing, the courthouse was packed with journalists. Daniel and Raphael entered together, avoiding making statements. Camille arrived soon after, surrounded by flashbulbs. She wore white once again, trying to project an image of purity. When the judge opened the session, Raphael presented Robert's testimony. The judge read it in silence, his expression growing more serious. This document indicates that Ms. Camille has already been involved in a similar situation with another child. The court will take this into consideration. Camille stood up, indignant. That's a lie. He's making it up. He's a bitter, rejected man. The referee raised his hand, cutting off the attack. "Sit down, Mrs. Camille." Daniel observed every detail. Beside him, he felt Anna's absence like a weight. His daughter was at home with Lucy, protected. Still, it was because of her that all this was happening. At the end of the session, the judge extended the protective order and ordered that Camille could not have any contact with Anna until a final ruling. Her defense was visibly shaken. On the way out, Raphael muttered, "We're winning little by little, but don't let your guard down." Daniel took a deep breath, looking up at the cloudy sky. He knew the war wasn't over yet. At home, he found Anna in her room, lying on her side, cuddling Charlie. When he entered, the girl looked up and gave a small smile. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed and held her hand. "Everything is going well, my love. Daddy is taking care of everything." Anna didn't speak, but rested her head on his shoulder. It was the answer Daniel needed most. The following days were relatively calm in the house. Daniel enjoyed every minute with his daughter, trying to restore a bit of her lost childhood. Anna drew, played in the yard, and almost always clung to Charlie. One afternoon, while they were in the garden, Daniel was assembling a makeshift swing with ropes and wood. Anna watched closely, curious. When he finished, he motioned for her to sit. The girl hesitated, but soon climbed up and held on tightly to the ropes. Daniel began to push her slowly, and a stifled laugh escaped his lips. It was the first time in a long time he'd heard a sound from her. A soft, short sound, but real. Daniel stopped, moved. "Anna? Did you laugh?" She blushed, clutching Charlie tightly to her chest. Then she covered her mouth with her little hand, as if afraid she'd done something wrong. Daniel knelt before her. "Don't be afraid. Daughter, your voice is the most beautiful thing in existence." Anna stared at him for a few seconds, and then, in an almost inaudible whisper, she blurted out, "Text." Daniel felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Tears fell before he could stop them. He hugged her tightly, his heart racing. "I'm here, my princess. I always will be." Lucy, who was watching from afar, brought her hands to her mouth, overcome with emotion. She said, Raphael, who had arrived for a meeting with Daniel, witnessed the scene and just shook his head in amazement. "That's worth more than any sentence." That night, Daniel tucked Anna in with extra care. She snuggled under the covers, holding Charlie, and before closing her eyes, she whispered again softly, "Good night, Dad." Daniel turned out the light with tears in his eyes. For the first time in 2 years, he heard his daughter say good night. And in that moment, I knew that no lie from Camille would be able to erase that victory. News of the hearing was still circulating in the press when Camille delivered another blow. In an exclusive interview with a popular program, she appeared with a choked voice, a handkerchief in her hand, and the same victimized expression. "I still love that child as if she were my own," she said, letting a tear fall. "But I was unfairly taken away. Daniel is manipulating everything to destroy me." The presenter nodded with a grave expression, as if she believed every word. The cameras focused on Camille's flawless face, and the production team showed old footage of her smiling alongside Anna, in moments that now seemed staged. Meanwhile, Daniel watched silently in the office, his jaw clenched. Lucy turned off the TV, furious. This woman is poisonous. She knows exactly how to deceive the public. Raphael, always calculating, opened the document folder. That's why we need to go beyond the technical evidence. We need to show that Anna is recovering away from her. This dismantles any motherly love rhetoric. Daniel took a deep breath. "But I don't want to expose my daughter. She doesn't deserve to be a showcase for anything." "I agree," Raphael said, "but we can use medical and psychological reports. The judge values the word of professionals." That afternoon, Daniel took Anna to an appointment with Dr. Elias, a child psychologist. The office was colorful, filled with toys and picture books. Elias, a calm-spoken man, bent down to the girl's level. "Hello, Anna. I'm Elias. Can we talk?" Anna didn't answer, but held Charlie and shook her head gently. Daniel watched from afar, his heart heavy. During the session, the girl drew several figures, including a huge sun illuminating two people holding hands. Elias smiled as he showed Daniel the paper. "That's a great sign. She's starting to externalize her confidence. In time, her voice will return." Daniel almost got emotional again. "She already said a few words at home." "Excellent," Elias noted. "I'll prepare a report to attach to the case." On the way back, Anna lay down in the back seat of the car, hugging Charlie. Her eyes shone as if she knew, even in silence, that she was finally being heard. And Daniel promised himself, every word he recovered from his daughter would be a victory against the darkness that Camille tried to spread. A few days later, Raphael arrived at Daniel's house with an envelope in his hands. "Here's Dr. Elias's report." He placed the document on the table. "It's detailed, consistent, and will be a significant factor in the process." Daniel opened it and read it carefully. The psychologist's words were firm. "The child shows signs of trauma resulting from psychological and physical abuse. Since Camille's separation, there is evidence of significant improvement, including partial resumption of speech and expressions of affection. Living with her father is protective and safe." Daniel took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and indignation. "So now it's not just my word, it's science." Raphael nodded. "And judges give a lot of weight to technical reports." Lucy entered the room, leading Anna by the hand. The girl was holding Charlie and a newly drawn drawing. On the paper was a large red heart enclosing three figures: herself, her father, and her aunt. Lucy smiled. "I think she's saying she feels protected." Daniel hugged his daughter tightly, holding the drawing as if it were a trophy. But on the other side, Camille wasn't standing still. As soon as she heard the report, she called another press conference. This time, her speech was even more aggressive. "These doctors are being bought off. Daniel uses money to manipulate even specialists. All they want is to destroy my image." Reporters took notes frantically. Her strategy was clear: sow doubt, cast shadows over any evidence. Raphael, upon watching the images, simply commented, "She's desperate. Anyone who screams too much is losing their footing." Daniel clenched his fists. "The problem is that, while she talks, my daughter relives the fear." Lucy stroked Anna's hair, who watched from afar with wide eyes. Her aunt immediately turned off the TV. "Enough. She won't invade this space anymore." Daniel looked at his daughter, who was resting her head on his shoulder, and thought, Camille can try to manipulate the whole world, but inside she has already lost. The courthouse was packed once again. Cameras and microphones jostled for space at the entrance, trying to get statements from Daniel or Camille. But both passed by in silence. In the courtroom, the judge opened the proceedings with a firm voice. "Today we will analyze the minor's psychological report." Raphael stood, handing over the envelope. The judge read it silently, while Camille watched him with tension disguised as a smile. After a few minutes, the judge looked up. "The report is clear. The minor shows signs of significant improvement since the defendant's removal. This reinforces the need to maintain the protective measure." Camille stood up abruptly. "This is manipulation. This child was trained to draw little hearts and pretend to get better. It's all an act." The judge banged the gavel on the table. "Silence, Mrs. Camille. Here we speak based on evidence, not theories." Raphael took advantage of the gap. "Your Excellency, we not only have Dr. Elias's report, we also have records of sessions in which the minor spoke after 2 years of silence, a breakthrough impossible to simulate. A murmur ran through the room." Daniel looked down, overcome with emotion, Remembering the first time he heard Anna whisper, "Daddy," the judge made new notes and concluded, "In light of the evidence, I maintain and reinforce the measures already granted." And I add, any attempt at indirect contact by the defendant with the minor will be considered a serious violation. Camille gritted her teeth, but kept her forced smile in front of the cameras waiting outside. As he was leaving, reporters asked Daniel what he thought of the decision. He simply replied, firmly and briefly, "The truth always wins." Back home, Lucy waited with Anna. As soon as she saw her father, the girl ran timidly to him and raised her arms. Daniel picked her up, hugging her tightly. Anna put her mouth to his ear and, almost in a whisper, said, "Dad won?" Daniel closed his eyes, overcome with emotion. "Not yet, daughter. But we're very close." With each court ruling against her, Camille became more aggressive. While she was losing ground in the courts, she sought to regain ground in the media. That week, she appeared on a late-night talk show. She looked impeccable, wearing a light blue dress and a practiced smile. But her tone changed. "Daniel has always been a control freak," he declared, staring intently into the camera. "From the beginning of our relationship, he watched me, installed cameras, monitored everything. This behavior isn't that of a protective father, but rather of someone unstable." The audience murmured. The presenter reinforced the narrative. "Are you saying he's dangerous?" "Yes." Camille nodded, fake tears welling up. "Dangerous for me, and even for his own daughter. He needs psychological help." The interview had an immediate impact. Headlines popped up. Ex-fiancé accuses Daniel of mental instability. At home, Daniel watched in silence, his fists clenched. Lucy turned off the television before Anna could see anything else. "She has no limits. Now she's going to try to paint you as crazy." Raphael, always cold, analyzed calmly. "It's predictable. When they can't overturn the evidence, they try to undermine credibility. But we're prepared. I've already requested a voluntary psychiatric report. Daniel, you'll undergo an official evaluation and prove that you're fully fit." Daniel nodded, still indignant. "I have nothing to hide. If necessary, I'll do 10 tests." The next day, in the office of a court-appointed specialist, Daniel answered each question calmly. The doctor recorded everything carefully. In conclusion, he declared, "I don't see any signs of instability. You demonstrate clarity, focus, and genuine concern for your daughter." Raphael smiled with satisfaction as he left. Report in hand, another one of her lies falls to the ground. That night, Daniel sat next to Anna on the porch. She was drawing sunflowers while hugging Charlie. He ran his hand through her hair and said softly, "You can make up whatever you want, but the truth will always be here. You are my living proof." Anna looked up and, in an almost imperceptible voice, replied, "I know." It was enough to give Daniel the strength to face the next attack. A few days later, Raphael arrived early at Daniel's house, carrying a new briefcase. His expression was even more serious than usual. She filed a request for supervised visitation. She spread the papers on the table. Camille claims that, despite the accusations, she has emotional ties to Anna and that a complete separation is harmful to the girl. Daniel turned pale. "Visiting, after everything you did?" "It's a classic maneuver," Raphael explained. "She knows she's unlikely to get custody, so she tries to maintain some contact to sow doubt." Lucy, who was listening to the conversation, exploded. "That's absurd. Putting Anna face to face with that woman would be torture." Raphael raised his hand to calm her. "I agree. And that's why we'll oppose it with all our strength. We already have medical reports that indicate the child's improvement since the removal. The judge will take this into account." Daniel took a deep breath, trying to control his anger. He looked down the hallway, where Anna sat drawing on the floor. The little girl was sketching a dark figure behind her and, Beside her, a huge sun. It was as if she were translating into images what everyone knew. Camille was the shadow that needed to be kept at bay. At the hearing scheduled to review the request, the judge heard both sides. Camille, in a sweet voice, stated, "I only want what's best for Anna. I'm not asking for custody, just the chance to see her, under supervision. She loves me, even if Daniel tries to erase that." Raphael stood up firmly. "Your Honor, all the medical reports show exactly the opposite. The child only showed progress after the removal. Any contact with the defendant represents a setback and a risk." The judge leafed through the documents, read some notes, and finally declared, "This court understands that there is no benefit in exposing the minor to risky situations again. The request for supervised visitation is denied." Camille stood frozen for a moment, her smile fading. Then she stood up abruptly and left the room without looking back. On the way out, Raphael looked at Daniel and murmured, "Another victory. But be prepared. The more she loses, the more dangerous she becomes." Daniel knew the lawyer was right. Camille wouldn't accept failure in silence. The judge's refusal hit Camille like a bombshell. While she had been smiling in front of the cameras until then, her fury was now boiling over. On the same day of the hearing, she called a hasty press conference. With calculated tears, he declared before reporters, "The court unfairly dismissed me. Daniel is manipulating judges, lawyers, and even doctors. He's not the heroic father everyone thinks. He's a dangerous man, capable of anything to maintain control." The headlines popped up within minutes. Camille accuses Daniel of manipulating the system. At home, Lucy turned off the TV as soon as she saw the scene. "Enough of this woman invading our living room every day." Daniel took a deep breath, trying to contain his anger. "It's not me she hurts. It's Anna. Every time she opens her mouth, she relives my daughter's pain." Raphael, sitting at the table, calmly leafed through the files. "I expected this move. When they lose in court, they resort to public opinion. But we have something she doesn't. Solid evidence. What we need now is to shield Anna from this noise." That night, Daniel took his daughter for a walk in the garden. The moon lit the yard, and Anna walked hand in hand with him. Charlie clutched to her chest. "You're safe, my love. Nothing will touch you," he murmured. Suddenly, Anna stopped and looked up at the sky. In a low voice, almost a whisper, she said, "Dad." Scared. Daniel immediately knelt down, holding his daughter's shoulders. "I know, Princess. But look me in the eyes. You'll never face this alone again." She rested her forehead against his, a gesture that had become habit. It was her way of saying she believed. On the other side of town, however, Camille was hatching new plans. Surrounded by advisors, she asked, "I want files, articles, anything from Daniel's past that can be used against him. If there's no dirt, make it up. I need to turn this around." The cold smile that appeared on her face made it clear she was not willing to lose. 2 days later, news portals started running strange headlines. Businessman accused of excessive control over family. Former employees speak of Daniel's explosive temper. Daniel read every line with indignation. "That's a lie. I've never treated anyone like that." Raphael took out his cell phone and showed another article. "It's a pattern. These are smaller sites, some even suspicious, but the strategy is clear. Spread rumors to later appear in larger outlets." Lucy snorted. "Camille has a hand in this. She's desperate." While they were arguing, Anna entered the room, holding Charlie. She sat in the corner, listening quietly. She took a sheet of paper and began to draw. A few minutes later, she handed the paper to her father, a tall figure with its mouth open, releasing dark lines like screams. Beside her, a small girl with sad eyes. Daniel swallowed hard. She understands. Even without words, she understands what's happening. Raphael placed his hand on Daniel's shoulder. "And that's why we can't react emotionally. Let's gather testimonies from people who actually lived with you and Anna. Teachers, neighbors, even your former maid, Martha, they all confirm who you really are. That night, Daniel received an unexpected call. It was from a former employee he had helped years ago. I've seen the reports. I know it's not true. If you need me to testify, I'm available. Daniel thanked me with a choked voice. Little by little, I realized I wasn't alone in this struggle. Meanwhile, Camille appeared once again in front of the cameras, wearing an impeccable white dress. Daniel tries to paint me as a villain, but he's the one hiding secrets. I just want the chance to protect that child. The speech sounded increasingly false, but it still attracted headlines. Daniel, observing everything, thought, if she wants a war of narratives, she'll have to face the truth, and the truth is more powerful than any lie. Raphael called Daniel into his office for a meeting. On the table were stacks of documents, reports, and a flash drive. It's decided, the lawyer said. We'll prepare a controlled press conference. We can no longer let Camille dictate the narrative. The time has come to reveal part of the truth. Daniel took a deep breath. But I don't want to expose Anna. We don't even need to. Raphael gave a small smile. We'll show excerpts of the videos, just enough to prove the violence, without directly identifying the girl. We'll also release the medical reports and Martha's testimony. Lucy, who was watching everything, crossed her arms. And let's make it clear that Daniel is not alone. I'll be there. 2 days later, a hotel conference room was prepared. Journalists crowded in, cameras poised. Daniel entered accompanied by Raphael and Lucy. He wore a dark suit, his face serious but not drawn. Raphael opened the press conference. We're here to clarify. What's been said about my client is false. We'll present concrete evidence. The lights dimmed, and a large screen showed clips of the videos. They didn't show Anna's face, just Camille's actions, pulling the girl's arm, kicking Charlie, shouting insults. The silence in the room was absolute. Then, Raphael showed parts of Dr. Elias' report. Since the defendant's removal, the child has shown clear signs of recovery. Journalists wrote down every word. Questions began to arise. Mr. Daniel, do you have anything to say? He stood up, took a deep breath, and faced the cameras. I'm not here to defend myself as a businessman. I'm here as a father. All I want is to protect my daughter. Anyone who tries to tell you otherwise is lying. The cameras recorded every syllable. There was firmness, pain, and love in his voice. Across town, Camille watched furiously on TV. Her fingers clenched against the arm of her chair, her artificial smile gone. For the first time, her narrative was being publicly challenged. And Daniel knew that was just the beginning of the turnaround. The press conference had an immediate impact. On the evening news, the images Raphael showed were replayed on every channel. Social media exploded with comments. If that's true, that woman can't go near the child. Strength to the father and the girl. May justice be served. Now I understand why the child didn't speak. It's pure trauma. Daniel watched silently from the couch, with Anna asleep on his lap and Charlie between them. He felt a slight sense of relief, but he didn't dare celebrate. He knew Camille would react. Lucy, next to her, commented, "For the first time, the majority is on our side." Raphael arrived soon after, bringing newspaper clippings. Public opinion has begun to shift. Major media outlets are now talking about you as a protective father, no longer as an unstable businessman. But make no mistake, Daniel, the more cornered she is, the more dangerous she becomes. The next morning, Camille appeared in front of the cameras again, but this time, her tone was different, less confident, more desperate. These videos are cuts. They don't show the context. Daniel wants to destroy me. But the reporters weren't so receptive anymore. Sharp questions arose. If they were just cuts, why did the child only get better after the separation? How do you explain the witness accounts? Camille stammered, irritated, and left without answering. Meanwhile, Anna woke up that morning more peacefully. She sat in the backyard and drew a smiling figure holding a sunflower. She handed the paper to her father and, in a whisper, said, happy. Daniel could barely hold back his tears. He hugged his daughter tightly. Me too, my love, me too. To him, that small advance was worth more than any headline. But he also knew the battle wasn't over. Camille still had cards to play. The new hearing was urgently scheduled. Raphael suspected that Camille's defense had orchestrated something unexpected. Daniel entered the courtroom with his head held high, accompanied by his lawyer. Lucy remained outside with Anna, shielding the girl from exposure. When the session began, Camille's lawyer stood up with a confident smile. Your Honor, we request the presentation of new evidence. We have records that indicate that Daniel is obsessed, controlling, and capable of manipulating images. The judge frowned. What evidence would that be? The lawyer handed over a flash drive. On the screen, edited videos showed Daniel arguing alone in his office, mumbling broken sentences as if he were having a seizure. The recordings were distorted, taken out of context. Daniel's eyes widened. This is grotesque manipulation. Raphael stood up immediately. Your Honor, I request a technical expert report. The defendant's defense presents doctored material without consistent metadata. This is an attempt to mislead the court. The judge nodded in agreement. Request accepted. The expert assessment will be carried out before any value is assigned to this material. Camille, sitting, hid her tension with a forced smile. As they left, journalists surrounded those involved. Daniel remained silent. Raphael declared, "We will not allow falsifications to obscure the truth." At home, Lucy hugged Anna when Daniel arrived. What happened? He asked. Another dirty trick, he replied, running his hand through his hair. But it won't work. Anna, who had been watching silently, took out her notebook and drew a scale of justice. On one side, she placed a sun. On the other, a shadow. The sun was heavier. Daniel held the drawing, moved. She knows, Lucy. Even in silence, she knows that the truth will prevail. Days later, the expert report arrived in court. The document was clear. The videos presented by the defendant's defense have been doctored. There are abrupt cuts, audio overlap, and no original metadata. The material has no legal value. At the next hearing, Raphael handed the report to the judge. Your Honor, the defendant's attempt to deceive this court is proven. The judge read it quickly and looked up sternly. Miss Camille, presenting false evidence is a serious violation. It further undermines your credibility. Camille tried to keep her smile, but her voice was shaky. I just received the material. I didn't know. The court does not tolerate manipulation, the judge interrupted. Consider yourself warned. Silence filled the room. Daniel watched in silence, feeling a pang of relief. Beside him, Raphael simply murmured, "Another lie exposed." As they left, reporters gathered. Unlike before, the questions now had a different tone. Camille, why did you present false evidence? Did you forge the material? Camille dodged without the same confidence as before. Meanwhile, at home, Anna waited with Lucy. When Daniel returned, the girl ran timidly and hugged him tightly. He lifted her up in his arms, overcome with emotion. "It's okay, my love. Another victory." Anna put her mouth to his ear and whispered softly, "True." Daniel held back tears. With each word his daughter snatched, he felt they were not only winning in court, but also healing deep wounds. That night, Anna drew again. It was a flower. A large sunflower with golden petals. Beside it, 3 figures held hands in the sunlight. No shadows appeared on the paper. For Daniel, that drawing was worth more than any sentence. It was a sign that, little by little, his daughter was finding peace again. Camille no longer had the same shine in front of the cameras. Recent defeats had tarnished her image, but she wasn't willing to give up. At the next hearing, he entered the room looking haggard, wearing dark clothes, trying to appear fragile. When the judge opened the session, his lawyer spoke. "Your Honor, given the prolonged separation, my client no longer requests custody or regular visits. She only requests the right to a dignified farewell with the minor, a single supervised meeting." Daniel felt his blood boil. "That's manipulation," he muttered softly to Raphael. Camille brought her hands to her face, pretending to cry. "I just want to look into her eyes one last time. Say goodbye." The judge stared thoughtfully at the papers. Raphael stood up calmly but firmly. "Your Honor, this request has no legal basis. The removal was ordered because the defendant poses a risk to the minor. Allowing this contact, even if only for a single moment, opens the door to further trauma." Camille raised her head, her voice trembling. "I'm human, Your Honor. I suffer too. It's not fair that I'm painted as a monster without even being able to say goodbye." The judge remained silent for a few seconds, leafing through the attached medical reports. Finally, he declared, "This court cannot permit contact that puts the minor at risk of psychological relapse. Request denied." Camille stood up abruptly, her fake crying giving way to uncontrollable fury. "You'll regret it. It won't stay like this." The bailiffs escorted her from the room, while Daniel breathed a sigh of relief, albeit tensely. Raphael simply commented, "She's reaching her limit. When people like that realize they've lost their power, they can become even more unpredictable." That night, when Daniel returned home, he found Anna drawing. On the paper, the girl had drawn a dark figure walking away from two people holding hands in the sun. She looked at her father, held Charlie against her chest, and whispered, "Goodbye." Daniel hugged her, tears in his eyes. "That's right, daughter. It's goodbye forever." The following days brought unexpected news. Raphael entered Daniel's office with a bulky folder in his hands. "The public prosecutor's office has opened a formal investigation against Camille," he said seriously, "not only for the mistreatment of Anna, but also for possible prior crimes." Daniel's eyes widened. "Previous crimes?" Raphael nodded. "Remember Robert's testimony, the man who lost custody of his son?" He presented documents, old police reports, and social worker reports. Now prosecutors are connecting the dots. Lucy, who was in the room, took a deep breath. So she left traces. Many. Raphael flipped through a few pages. In every case, the pattern repeats itself. She approaches vulnerable families, gains their trust, and then begins manipulating them. She always gets away with it, shifting the blame onto others. But this time, there's no escape. Daniel stood up and paced, feeling the tension in his chest. "It's not just about me or Anna, then. It's about all the children who may have suffered at her hands." "Exactly." Raphael closed the file. This investigation could transform her from a defendant in a family case to a defendant in a criminal case. Meanwhile, Anna was playing in the backyard. Sitting on the grass, she drew a sun that illuminated several children holding hands. Daniel approached, kneeling beside her. "What is it, daughter?" Anna pointed to the drawing and murmured shyly, "Friends. Free." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. His paternal instincts mixed with the certainty that this child, even so young, understood more than he seemed. That night, when he put his daughter to bed, he promised in a low voice, "We will end the darkness, not just for you, but for all the other children it tried to destroy." Across town, Camille received notification of the investigation. The smile she usually wore on camera disappeared completely. For the first time, she looked genuinely scared. The headlines began to multiply. Public Prosecutor's Office opens investigation against Camille for mistreatment. Former partners report pattern of abuse. This time, it wasn't just blogs or gossip columns. It was the major newspapers, the country's main television news programs. Camille, who had previously been greeted with flowers by the anchors, now saw doors closing. Her team of advisors began to abandon her. One by one, the professionals turned off their phones and cut off contact. Without support, all that was left was fury. At the mansion, Daniel watched the coverage alongside Raphael and Lucy. "This is the beginning of the end for her," the lawyer commented, adjusting his glasses. "But we need to remain cautious. People like that, when cornered, can become unpredictable." Lucy completed. "At least now the whole country is seeing who she really is." In the garden, Anna played with colorful blocks. For the first time in a long time, she giggled softly as she built little towers. Daniel watched her from afar, thrilled. Each laugh was a victory against the silence. At night, in the bedroom, he sat next to his daughter. "You are bringing the light back, my love." Anna, with Charlie in her arms, looked at him and whispered, "No shadow." Daniel smiled, tears welling up. "That's right, princess. No shadow." While father and daughter grew stronger, Camille locked herself in a borrowed apartment, surrounded by old papers and clippings. She stared at herself in the mirror, her eyes red with rage. "No one destroys me. Not him, not that child." But, contrary to what he said, his empire of manipulation was beginning to crumble before everyone's eyes. The public prosecutor's office moved quickly. Raphael received an official notification and took it to Daniel. They're going to interview Robert and other witnesses. They want to map out Camille's entire history. Daniel ran his hand through his hair, feeling the tension in the air. Finally, she will be unmasked once and for all. Days later, Robert appeared before the prosecutor. His testimony was firm, filled with pain, but also courage. "My son changed completely after Camille came into our lives. He was talkative and happy. Suddenly, he became silent, full of fears. I reported him, but she painted me as the aggressor. I lost custody. To this day, I haven't been able to get my boy back. Prosecutors recorded every word. Others were also called, neighbors, former co-workers, even a teacher from one of the schools Camille attended. They all reported the same pattern: initial charm, manipulation, and, ultimately, destruction. Meanwhile, at Daniel's house, the mood had changed. Anna was becoming more open. During a quiet afternoon, she showed her father a new drawing, several smiling children under a bright sun, and in the middle of them, Charlie the teddy bear. "Who are they, daughter?" asked Daniel. She took a deep breath and, in a whisper, replied, "Children, free." Daniel hugged her tightly, overcome with emotion. "You are saving more than yourself, my love." Raphael arrived at that moment and brought good news. The prosecutor was impressed by the consistency of the accounts. "This case goes beyond custody or protective measures. We're moving toward a formal criminal complaint." Lucy smiled, relieved. Finally, justice is reaching this woman. That night, Daniel watched his daughter sleep peacefully, Charlie nestled in her arms. For the first time in years, he felt peace was possible. Meanwhile, Camille, isolated and without allies, received summonses in person. Her once confident gaze now held something new: fear. The morning was marked by an unusual silence in Daniel's house. Raphael arrived early, carrying an official envelope. The seal of the public prosecutor's office was emblazoned on the cover. "It's official," he said, placing the document on the table. "Camille has been criminally charged with mistreatment and psychological abuse. Now she's no longer just a defendant in a family case. She's a defendant in a criminal case." Daniel took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. so finally she will answer for everything. Lucy squeezed her brother's arm. It's not just for Anna. It's for all the children she hurt. Meanwhile, the news was already spreading. Newscasts showed images of Camille leaving the prosecutor's office with a grim expression, surrounded by reporters. The headlines were blunt. Businessman's ex-fiancée charged with a crime. Accused of mistreatment may face prison time. Anna, however, remained oblivious to the paintings. Sitting in the backyard, she drew flowers and hearts. When Daniel approached, she held up the paper, two figures holding hands under a huge sun. "Who are they?" he asked. Anna smiled slightly and replied shyly, "Dad and me." Daniel hugged her, tears streaming uncontrollably. "Yes, my princess, always the two of us." That night, as he put his daughter to bed, Daniel sat in silence for a few minutes, watching her breathe peacefully. He remembered Rachel, his deceased wife, and murmured to himself, "I promise I will honor your memory. I will protect our little girl until the end." Across town, Camille locked herself in an apartment, furious. She tore up newspapers, screamed to herself. For the first time, she saw prison bars as a real possibility. And deep down, he was beginning to realize that his mask was beyond repair. The announcement of the criminal trial was a turning point. Raphael gathered Daniel and Lucy in the living room to finalize every detail. "The case is now criminal," he explained, leafing through documents. "Camille will be charged with mistreatment, psychological abuse, and attempted procedural fraud. The sentence could be significant." Daniel nodded, his face serious. "I don't want revenge, I want justice." Lucy completed, "Justice for Anna and all the other children." While the adults argued, Anna played with building blocks on the rug. Every now and then, she looked at her father and smiled. Daniel realized every little gesture of hers was a reminder that the fight was worth it. The following week, the courthouse was prepared for the trial. Journalists surrounded the entrance, cameras broadcasting live. Inside, Daniel sat with Raphael. His heart was pounding, but Lucy's presence at his side brought comfort. Camille entered shortly after. Handcuffed. Her fake smile was gone. Her gaze, once cold and calculating, now revealed anger and fear. The audience murmured. The judge opened the session in a deep voice. "We are here to judge the defendant Camille, formally accused by the public prosecutor's office." Witnesses were called. Martha, the former maid, reaffirmed every detail of what she witnessed. Robert recounted his own tragedy, the son he lost to Camille's manipulation. Other testimonies reinforced the same pattern of cruelty. Raphael presented the videos, medical reports, and psychological reports. Each piece of evidence was like a brick in the wall that was building against the stern. Camille tried to speak, cried, screamed, accused everyone of conspiracy, but the effect was no longer the same. The victim mask was no longer convincing. At home, during breaks between hearings, Daniel protected Anna from the commotion. He played with her in the yard and helped her draw. One night, the girl whispered softly, "Dad, the sun won." Daniel hugged her, tears in his eyes. "Yes, daughter, the sun always conquers the darkness." The trial was still ongoing, but Daniel knew. The end of the fight was getting closer. The courtroom was packed on the day Camille was scheduled to be heard. Journalists filled every corner, and even curious citizens had managed to get in to watch the trial, which was already mobilizing public opinion. Daniel sat in the front row next to Raphael, keeping his eyes fixed on the judge. Lucy was nearby, ready to support her brother. When Camille was called to the center of the room, she walked with tense steps. She wore modest clothing, her hair tied back, trying to convey humility. But as soon as she began to speak, her tone changed. "Your Excellency, this is all a setup." Her voice echoed through the room. "I loved that child. I always cared for her like a daughter. Daniel is the one manipulating everything. He spied on me, controlled me, terrorized me. Murmurs filled the room. Camille took a deep breath and, in a theatrical act, let tears flow. I just wanted to be accepted, but I was rejected, and now they want to destroy me. The judge remained silent, watching intently. Raphael stood up. Your Honor, the defendant speaks of love, but the videos show a different reality. The medical report confirms the child's trauma, and, most importantly, her progress since her separation undermines any talk of care. Camille tried to interrupt, but the judge silenced her with a gesture. Mrs. Camille, you will have your time. Raphael continued. We're not dealing with misunderstandings. We're dealing with a pattern of abuse proven by witnesses, documents, and expert reports. Camille lost control. She screamed and pointed at Daniel. You will pay for exposing me. I destroyed your life, and I will destroy it again. The judge banged the gavel. Order in the room. Silence fell once more. Daniel took a deep breath, holding his ground. He knew Camille's outburst had revealed who she truly was. At that moment, more than any video or report, her own mask broke in front of everyone. Outside, reporters were already advancing the headline. Defendant loses control during trial and threatens victim in the middle of the hearing. And Daniel felt the end was getting closer and closer. The courtroom filled up again on the day of the final statements. The atmosphere was tense and expectant. Everyone awaited the outcome of a case that had already shocked the country. The first to be called was Martha. The former maid spoke firmly, even under Camille's withering gaze. I saw it with my own eyes. Anna suffered. Camille screamed, pulled, humiliated her. When I questioned her, I was fired. I'll never forget that girl's fear. Then Robert gave his testimony. His voice trembled as he remembered his lost son, but his determination impressed. Camille destroyed my family, and now she's tried to do the same to his. Don't let it continue. Other witnesses confirmed smaller details, but they fit the same pattern: manipulation, aggression, lying. Raphael ended the testimony phase with a firm statement. Your Honor, this isn't just a family conflict. We're dealing with a defendant who repeatedly infiltrated vulnerable homes to wield power and violence. The victim wasn't just Anna, but an entire network of trust. It's time to put an end to this cycle. Camille was called to speak for the last time. She walked to the center of the room, her eyes red, but still trying to maintain a victimized look. I made a mistake, maybe. But I never meant any harm. I just wanted love. I was rejected. I don't deserve prison. I deserve compassion. Silence fell over the room. The judge jotted down a few words and closed the session. The sentence will be read in 3 days. As he left, Daniel took a deep breath. Lucy squeezed his hand. It won't be long now. At home, Anna waited in the backyard. When her father arrived, she ran to him and, in a gesture that surprised everyone, said clearly, "Daddy, end." Daniel hugged her with tears in his eyes. Yes, Princess, the end is coming. Those words were stronger than any speech in court. The courthouse was packed on the day of the sentencing. Journalists jostled for space, cameras broadcast live. It was the most anticipated trial of the year. Daniel arrived accompanied by Raphael and Lucy. His heart was pounding, but his face remained serene. He didn't want to appear fragile. Outside, supporters held up signs with encouraging messages: "Justice for Anna, protect the children." Camille entered soon after, escorted by court officials. She was dejected, her gaze lost. For the first time, there was no rehearsed smile, no flawless makeup, just the weight of the fall. The judge began reading. After a detailed analysis of the evidence, testimonies, and reports presented, this court concludes that the defendant, Camille, mistreated and psychologically abused the minor Anna Carter. She also attempted to manipulate the case with fraudulent evidence. The silence in the room was absolute. Daniel held his breath. "Therefore," continued the judge, "I sentence the defendant to 6 years in prison in addition to restriction of rights related to custody or coexistence with minors." A murmur ran through the audience. Camille put her hands to her face in shock. The cameras recorded every detail. Daniel closed his eyes, feeling a wave of relief. Raphael placed a hand on his shoulder. "We achieved." Lucy discreetly wiped away her tears. Outside, reporters crowded to hear the first words. Daniel, surrounded by microphones, summed it up in one sentence. "Today, justice spoke for all the children who once remained silent." That same afternoon, already at home, Daniel found Anna playing in the backyard. When he told her, the girl hugged Charlie to her chest, gave a shy smile and said, "Book." Daniel lifted her into his arms, tears streaming unashamedly. "Yes, daughter, now we are free." And in that moment, the weight of years of pain finally began to lift. The sentence had already been handed down, but Daniel and Anna's life was just beginning to find a new rhythm. The house, previously marked by silence and tension, was now filled with small sounds: light footsteps, shy giggles, the sound of pencils scribbling on colored paper. Anna, little by little, began to speak more. She still used short sentences, single words, but each syllable was a victory. Daniel wrote them all down in a notebook, as if collecting precious stones. Daddy, water, sun, free, simple words that carried the weight of a life being reborn. Lucy helped maintain the routine, showering the girl with affection. "She's blossoming," he'd say at night as he prepared dinner. "It's like he finally has room to be a child." Daniel smiled, watching his daughter run around the yard with Charlie in her arms. "That's what I fought for." The news still circulated in the press, but it no longer had the same impact. Camille had been taken to prison, and the headlines turned to other scandals. Little by little, the case ceased to be a spectacle and became merely a reminder of justice served. One afternoon, Daniel took Anna to a park. The sun was shining brightly, and the little girl ran to the rides, laughing more openly than ever. He watched her with teary eyes. "Go, daughter. The world is yours now." She looked back, smiled, and shouted clearly, "Cheers!" It was the first time the word had come out loud, firm, and unafraid. Daniel ran to her, hugging her in the middle of the park, ignoring the stares around him. That night, as she tucked Anna in for bed, she pointed to her sketchbook. She showed the last page, a huge sun illuminating 2 figures holding hands. Beside it, in crooked letters, she had written, "Me and Dad." Daniel kissed her forehead and whispered, "That's it, my love. Always the 2 of us." And for the first time in a long time, he fell asleep peacefully. The days passed, and Daniel's routine with Anna began to ease. But a growing unease grew within him, the feeling that his struggle couldn't end with Camille's conviction. One silent night, sitting in his office, he leafed through his daughter's drawings. Every sun, every heart, every scribble was living proof of the strength of a child who had survived pain. Daniel closed his eyes and murmured, "How many other children are still trapped in the darkness?" That's when he made his decision. The next day, he met Lucy and Raphael. "I want to create a foundation, a space where children like Anna receive psychological support, legal protection, and, above all, a voice." Lucy smiled with teary eyes. "A beautiful idea. It will transform suffering into hope." Raphael agreed. "And you have the resources and credibility to do so. After what you've been through, no one will question your motivation." Anna entered the room at that moment, carrying Charlie in her arms. Daniel bent down and stroked her hair. "What do you think, daughter? Helping other children like you?" The girl thought for a moment and, in a whisper, said, "Son." for everyone. Daniel felt his heart race. It was the name he needed. Then it will be the Saul Foundation. Weeks later, the launch took place in a packed auditorium. Journalists, psychologists, judges, and families were in attendance. Daniel took the stage with Anna by his side, holding her little hand. "My daughter taught me that silence also speaks," she declared before the audience, "and that no child should carry the weight of pain alone." Today, we begin a new story. The audience gave a standing ovation. Anna, shyly, hugged Charlie and smiled. It was the beginning of a new chapter, where pain turned into purpose and shadow into light. The first months of Saul Foundation were intense. The phone rang nonstop, and messages arrived from all over the country. Parents, teachers, and even neighbors reported abuse, seeking guidance. Daniel followed everything closely. He didn't want to be just the name behind the foundation. He wanted to be present. He visited the colorful rooms where psychologists welcomed children in play sessions. He watched volunteer lawyers provide free counseling to families. In one of the hallways, he stopped in front of a mural of drawings made by the children he was caring for. There were flowers, houses, hearts. But what moved him most was seeing a large, smiling sun in the center, just like the ones Anna drew. Lucy approached with a proud smile. "See, your struggle has become hope for many." Daniel swallowed hard, his eyes watering. "It's not my fight, it's Anna's. She was the one who showed me the way." At home, Anna was also showing signs of transformation. He was now speaking in short, complete sentences and laughing more easily. One afternoon, he showed his father a new drawing, several children holding hands under a sun. In the corner of the page, he had written in crooked letters, "We are strong." "That's right, daughter." Daniel hugged her emotionally. "You are strong." The foundation's impact grew. News reports showed families saved by complaints received there. Professionals praised the initiative. Daniel was beginning to be seen not only as a businessman, but as someone who transformed pain into purpose. In an interview, he summed it all up in one simple sentence: "What happened to my daughter cannot happen to anyone else." As she said this, Anna watched on TV, hugging Charlie. She smiled, as if she understood every word. And in that smile, Daniel saw confirmation that they were on the right path. Life seemed to finally stabilize. Saul Foundation grew. Anna blossomed every day, and Daniel began to believe that the worst was behind him. But the past had strange ways of coming back. One morning, Raphael arrived with an envelope in his hands, his expression grave. "Daniel, I received something we need to talk about." He opened the envelope and revealed a copy of an old police report related to the accident that took the life of Anna's mother, Rachel. Daniel frowned. This case was already closed. It was a domestic accident. Raphael took a deep breath. That's what it looked like. But an anonymous witness has provided new information. According to her, Rachel didn't fall down those stairs alone. The silence in the room was suffocating. Lucy put her hand to her mouth, shocked. "Are you saying that?" "Maybe she was pushed," Raphael added, staring at Daniel. "And the description we received points to someone, very similar to Camille." Daniel felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Memories flooded his mind. Anna's desperate cries that night, the silence that followed his mother's death. The inexplicable pain of his daughter, who never spoke again. "No," he murmured. "That's impossible. I would have noticed." Lucy held his arm. "Maybe Anna noticed. Maybe her trauma comes from there." At that moment, Anna entered the room with Charlie in her arms. She noticed the heavy atmosphere and stopped, observing the adults in silence. Daniel called her over, knelt down, and asked softly, "Daughter, that night, did you see anything?" Anna hugged the teddy bear tightly. Her eyes filled with tears. After a long silence, she whispered, "Mom, fell. Camille." pushed. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. His daughter's words were few, but they carried the weight of a devastating revelation. Raphael closed the envelope firmly. Then the case of Rachel's death needs to be reopened. Daniel was paralyzed by Anna's confession. His daughter's few words echoed in his mind like thunder. Mommy fell. Camille pushed. He sat up slowly, running his hands over his face, trying to process it. 2 years believing his wife had died by accident. 2 years of Anna's silence, and now the truth was coming from his own daughter. Lucy, moved, hugged the girl carefully. You were very brave, my love. Raphael picked up the phone immediately. I'm going to file a request to reopen the investigation into Rachel's death. With this new information, the public prosecutor's office can't ignore it. Daniel looked at him, still stunned. Raphael, I didn't notice anything. I was blind. Don't blame yourself, the lawyer said firmly. Camille knew how to manipulate, but now we have something we never had before. Anna's voice. Anna, still clinging to Charlie, stared at her father with teary eyes. Daniel approached, knelt before her, and held her small hands. Thank you, daughter. Thank you for trusting me. The girl simply rested her forehead against his, a gesture that had become her symbol of trust. Hours later, the news was already running through the newspapers. Rachel Carter's death may not have been an accident. The public prosecutor's office is considering reopening the case. Daniel watched the report in silence, feeling a whirlwind of emotions, anger, pain, but also determination. If she took my daughter's mother, he murmured, then she will pay for this too. Raphael placed his hand on her shoulder. Let's go after the truth, Daniel. Not just for you, but for Anna. And at that moment, he understood that the fight was not over yet. 2 days later, Raphael entered Daniel's house with news that would change everything. The public prosecutor's office has officially reopened the case into Rachel's death. The investigation will be resumed. Daniel felt his heart race. Even after hearing his daughter's confession, it was still hard to believe that the tragedy wasn't an accident. And they're going to reinvestigate the scene, interview neighbors, and call former employees, Raphael explained. Your wife's death is now being treated as a suspected homicide. Lucy, who was nearby, murmured, Finally, Rachel deserves justice. In the following days, investigators went to the former house where everything had happened. They combed through records, collected forgotten reports, and heard from people who worked there at the time. Martha, the former employee, testified again. I always thought it was strange. Rachel wasn't the type to be careless. The latter had no history of accidents. Meanwhile, Daniel anxiously followed every detail. He felt torn apart by reliving the night he lost his wife. But now there was also a glimmer of hope, the possibility of ending that morning with the truth. Anna, for her part, was quieter than usual. One night, sitting in bed with Charlie, she looked at her father and whispered, Mom, smile. Daniel held her hand, and she keeps smiling, daughter, inside you, inside me. He realized that, as painful as it was, this investigation could be the key to freeing not only Rachel's memory, but also his own daughter from the weight of silence. On the other side, Camille received the summons to the prison. When she read that she would be investigated for murder, her face hardened. They won't be able to prove anything, he murmured, but his voice wasn't as firm as before. For the first time, he seemed to realize that the siege was complete. The news of the case's reopening hit the press like a bombshell. Headlines splashed across the front pages of newspapers. Rachel Carter's death may have been murder. Ex-fiancé already convicted of abuse now investigated for homicide. TV shows replayed old photos of Rachel, describing her as a cheerful woman, devoted to her daughter, and highly respected by all. Public outcry quickly grew. Reporters surrounded the Soul Foundation, seeking statements. Raphael advised Daniel not to give hasty interviews. Now is the moment for strategic silence. Let the evidence speak. Even so, journalists broadcast live from the door of the house, and commentators did not hesitate to classify Camille as cold and calculating. Inside the prison, Camille watched the news reports on the small TV in her cell. Each headline was a stab at her already shattered image. She pounded hard on the bars, shouting, "I didn't kill anyone. This is a setup." But there was no longer an audience willing to believe her tears. At home, Daniel avoided exposure as much as possible, focusing on Anna. The girl noticed the movement, but reacted differently than she had in the past. One night, she took a sheet of paper and drew 3 figures: herself, her father, and a smiling woman with long hair. Above, a sun illuminated them all. "Is that Mom?" Daniel asked, his voice breaking. Anna nodded and said clearly, "Mommy, light." Daniel wept silently, hugging his daughter. He felt that Rachel was somehow present in that struggle. The next day, Raphael brought another piece of news. The public prosecutor's office is already working on the possibility of formally charging Camille with qualified homicide. Lucy sighed in relief. Then the truth will finally come out. Daniel looked up, firmly. "That's all I want. For Rachel's memory to be cleansed, and for Anna to know that her mother didn't fall. She was knocked down." The investigators returned to the former house where Rachel had died. The place was now empty, but every detail was carefully revisited. Old reports were reanalyzed, stairs measured, and handrails inspected. One of the experts pointed out something curious. The handrail showed no signs of wear at the time. But it did show impact marks at the height corresponding to a person's body being pushed. This has never been mentioned before. Another technician highlighted, "The position in which the body was found does not suggest an accidental fall. There are signs of external force." This information was added to the investigation. Combined with Anna's account and the suspicions raised by witnesses, a consistent picture began to form. Raphael took the partial report to Daniel. "They have enough evidence to go on. Camille could be formally charged within a few days." Daniel ran his hand over his face, feeling a mixture of pain and relief. So Rachel was really taken from us. Lucy, who was with him, shook his hand. "But now you know, and Rachel will have justice." At home, Daniel talked to Anna about his mother. "Daughter, they are discovering the truth about what happened to Mom." Anna hugged Charlie and replied, with a trembling but firm voice, "Mom, it didn't fall." Daniel picked her up, excited. "That's right, my love. Now everyone will know." On the other side, in the prison, Camille received news that new reports revealed inconsistencies in Rachel's death. For the first time, she truly panicked. She paced the cell, muttering to herself, "They can't prove it. They can't." But deep down, I already knew. The truth was coming to light, and there was no longer any escape. 2 days later, Raphael entered Daniel's house with a serious but determined expression. He carried an official envelope. "It's official," he said, placing the document on the table. "The public prosecutor's office has filed a formal complaint against Camille for Rachel's murder." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the news. So, it wasn't an accident. It never was. Raphael nodded. Now it's a serious criminal charge. Aggravated homicide. Based on the expert reports, the testimonies, and, most importantly, Anna's account. Lucy put her hand to her chest, overcome with emotion. Rachel will get justice. Finally. Daniel took a deep breath and looked at his daughter, who was drawing on the living room rug. Anna made a huge sun, illuminating 3 figures, herself, her father, and her mother, all holding hands. When Daniel approached, the girl said in a low voice, "Mom, live." Tears streamed down his face. "Yes, daughter, she lives in you, in us." Meanwhile, the news spread through the press. Headlines filled the screens. Camille is now a defendant in a homicide case. Rachel Carter's death case takes a new turn. At the prison, Camille reacted furiously. She threw her plate of food against the wall and yelled at the other inmates, "It's a lie! They want to destroy me!" But there was no longer an audience for her performances. The entire country now saw her not just as an aggressor, but as a possible murderer. That night, Daniel sat beside Anna's bed until she fell asleep. He watched his daughter breathe calmly and murmured quietly, "Rachel, wherever you are, the truth is coming. I promise your story will not be forgotten." And in that instant, he felt he was closer to the end of that long battle. The day of Camille's trial for Rachel's murder arrived with an almost suffocating atmosphere. The courtroom was packed, journalists jostled for space, and curious onlookers crowded the hallways. The entire country followed every detail. Daniel arrived accompanied by Raphael and Lucy. He was dressed soberly, his gaze firm but heavy with memories. It wasn't just a judgment. It was a reckoning with the most painful night of his life. When Camille entered, handcuffed, the hubbub grew louder. This time, there was no smile, no forced tears. Her face was hard. Her eyes filled with hatred. The judge opened the session. "We are here to judge the defendant, Camille, accused of the qualified homicide of Rachel Carter." The prosecutor presented the case, expert reports that indicated inconsistencies in the fall, testimonies that pointed to patterns of abuse, and, above all, Anna's account that even as a child she had retained the memory of the scene. Raphael firmly reinforced the accusation. "Your Honor, we're not talking about assumptions. We're talking about evidence, technical expertise, consistent witnesses, and the defendant's pattern of behavior. Everything points to the same outcome. Rachel didn't fall. She was pushed." Camille asked to speak. She stood up, her voice full of venom. "This is a farce. I never touched Rachel. They're condemning me because they need a villain for their personal tragedies." The judge ordered silence. The room watched every gesture, every word. Daniel, sitting in the front row, closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered Rachel smiling, holding Anna in her lap. That memory gave him strength. As he left the first day of trial, reporters surrounded him. He summed it up in one sentence. "I'm not seeking revenge. I'm seeking justice for my daughter's mother." Meanwhile, at home, Anna waited with Lucy. When she saw her father arrive, she ran to him and said softly, "Mom," smiling. Daniel hugged her tightly, certain that her every word would guide him to the end. The second day of the trial began with the presentation of the technical evidence. The courtroom was packed, and every word of the experts was met with absolute silence. The first expert showed pictures and diagrams of the staircase where Rachel had died. The body's position doesn't indicate an accidental fall. There are impact marks on the handrail, indicating external force. Another expert showed the revised report. The angle of the fall and the absence of bruising in common accident spots suggest that the victim was pushed violently. Murmurs rippled through the room. Daniel felt his heart sink, but also a sense of relief. The truth was finally being exposed. Martha was then called in. The former employee again reported the tensions between Camille and Rachel. They argued a lot. Rachel distrusted her. A few days before the accident, "I heard Camille say that things would be easier if Rachel weren't there anymore." The prosecutor highlighted the sentence as a key point. Robert was also heard, reinforcing the defendant's pattern of manipulation and violence. "What happened to Daniel's wife is the same as what almost happened to me and my son. She always follows the same script." Camille, from the dock, reacted angrily. With each testimony, she shifted in her seat, rolled her eyes, and muttered insults that echoed throughout the courtroom. The judge warned her more than once. "Mrs. Camille, control yourself, or you will be removed." Late in the afternoon, the prosecutor concluded, "Your Excellency, we're not talking about coincidences. We're talking about a pattern of violence, manipulation, and cruelty. Camille not only destroyed a family, but also tried to silence the truth." Daniel left the courtroom exhausted, but with a new feeling, hope. At home, he found Anna waiting at the door with Charlie in her arms. She looked up and asked in a low voice, "Mom, almost free?" Daniel hugged her tightly. "Almost, daughter. Very soon, Mommy will rest in peace." The third day of the trial was marked by Camille's own testimony. The room was packed, the atmosphere tense. When she stood to speak, her eyes flashed with arrogance and desperation. She began with a choked voice, trying to regain her victim mask. "Your Excellency. I loved that family. I never wished anyone any harm. Rachel was unstable, tired, distracted. She could have stumbled on her own. They're turning me into a murderer because they need someone to blame." Murmurs ran through the audience, but the promoter was quick to intervene. "Can you explain why witnesses heard you say that things would be easier without Rachel?" Camille stuttered, but soon composed herself. Words taken out of context. "We all say thoughtless things in moments of anger." The prosecutor insisted. "So how do you explain the expert reports that indicate a push and not an accident?" She took a deep breath and raised her voice. "This is a setup. Daniel has always wanted to destroy me. From the beginning, he watched me, controlled me. If anyone here is dangerous, it's him." At that moment, Daniel remained silent, but his firm gaze showed he would not be shaken. Raphael stood up and asked to speak. "Your Excellency, we're witnessing the same scenario we've been witnessing for months. Fake tears, unsubstantiated accusations, and a refusal to admit the obvious. The evidence is clear. Rachel didn't fall. She was pushed." The judge called for silence. The jury watched every gesture, every word. Camille spoke again, but her voice no longer had the same strength. I didn't do anything." The silence that followed was heavy. The victim act was no longer convincing. On the way out, Daniel didn't speak to reporters. He simply shook Raphael's hand and murmured, "It's almost over." At home, Anna showed her father a new drawing, 3 smiling figures under a huge sun. In the corner, she had written in crooked letters, "Happy Mom." Daniel hugged her, feeling that they were finally close to the end. The courtroom was packed for the sentencing. The silence was so thick it felt suffocating. Daniel breathed deeply. Sitting in the front row next to Raphael and Lucy, Camille was brought in by the bailiffs, handcuffed, her face pale. She looked around with anger and fear, like a cornered beast. The judge began reading, after reviewing the expert evidence, witness statements, and the circumstances of the case. This court finds the defendant guilty of the qualified homicide of Rachel Carter. A murmur ran through the room. Daniel closed his eyes, feeling the tears fall. The defendant is sentenced to 20 years in prison in a closed regime, without the right to immediate benefits. Camille screamed, tried to get up, but was restrained by the officers. "That's a lie, a setup. I didn't kill anyone." But his words no longer carried weight. The judge banged his gavel. Sentence handed down, justice served. Daniel took a deep breath, hugging Lucy. Raphael squeezed her shoulder firmly. For the first time in years, he felt a cycle coming to an end. As they left, journalists crowded together. Daniel summed it up in a few words. Today, Rachel's voice was heard, and Hannah's too. Back home, he found his daughter waiting in the backyard. Anna ran to him with Charlie in her arms, her eyes shining. "Dad, is it over?" she asked in a whisper. Daniel knelt down, held her little hands, and smiled, even through his tears. "It's over, my princess. We're free." Anna rested her forehead against his and said clearly, more firmly than ever, "Happy Mommy." Daniel hugged her tightly, feeling that in that moment the pain finally gave way to peace. The sun was setting on the horizon, turning the sky golden, and for the first time in a long time, the house no longer seemed heavy with shadows. It was the beginning of a new life,